Have you ever seen the movie American Gangster? The black guy in the movie was my dad, not the white guy, obviously. And I don't mean Denzel Washington either, even though that would have been awesome. But the movie American Gangster, for those of you who haven't seen it, was about the story of Frank Lucas, who was my father. And he was an African American drug dealer back in the late 60s, early 70s. And the reason why he became infamous was because he was able to establish a connection to get the heroin directly from its source in Southeast Asia and bring it directly to New York without a middleman, which gave him a better product, a much purer product, and he was able to offer it also at a lower price. That formula made him lots and lots of money. So Hollywood made a movie about it, and as a result, there was a big media splash. There were interviews everywhere, articles, and a lot of people were under the impression that I was just this, really lucky girl sitting on a pile of money. And let me tell you, nothing could have been farther from the truth. After my dad went to prison when I was approximately 3 or 4 years old, and then of course my mother when I was about 9. I grew up with my grandparents in Puerto Rico, and they were of very modest means. I grew up in I'd say lower middle class neighborhood, yeah. And all of my friends had both of their parents at home. There was nobody else that I knew who had a parent in prison. So that made me feel really, inadequate. I didn't feel like I was as good as other people. I felt like I had to hide my condition. I was so ashamed of it. And I thought that if other kids knew my situation or knew that my parents were in prison, they wouldn't want to talk to me. And of course, the truth is their parents probably knew, but the kids didn't. Everybody was really nice to me. I was always invited to outings, family outings with my friends, families, to the mall, everywhere. Everybody always invited me. So I was always like, that extra member of the family. And as a result, I always overheard conversations of mothers with their daughters and fathers with their sons. I had to endure what for me was the torture of seeing, moms hugging their daughters and dads kissing their little girls. Because you always want what you can't have. My friends always took those things for granted and probably even didn't like when their dad would kiss them. But for me, that was something that I wanted so badly because I didn't have it. But it didn't matter where I was. At 3 o'clock every Sunday, I'd go home quietly and I'd wait for my parents' call at 3 o'clock. My mom would usually call first, and then my dad. Phone calls were probably no longer than 15 minutes. And, their phone calls always made me feel worse. It was like back to reality. I'd spend the whole week pretending to be something that I wasn't in my mind. And on Sundays at 3, I was always, dragged back down to reality. The reality to me was that I was not good enough. I was damaged goods. I almost felt like an imposter, trying to pretend to be something that I was not. I was trying to pretend that I was normal, and I wasn't. And those thoughts really took root in my mind. I lived in this sad little corner of my life. This self-made little box, for a good part of my life, unaware of the opportunities and unable to accept my abilities and my self-value. I'll tell you why you shouldn't let the past hold you back. Who would ever think that the person that I just described, you know, this girl with all these self-esteem issues and inadequacy issues, who would have ever thought that I would become a successful inspirational speaker? If you would have told me this, I would have never believed it in a million years. I never thought it possible. You know, the odds were never in my favor as far as I was concerned. But somehow, when I started looking at life from a different point of view, and I stopped looking at my life through the lens of my past, I was able to move forward finally and set myself free from the chains of my past.